So many women actually come to Italy for one sole purpose: to find love, to find romantic love. But what actually happens for a lot of women is they find something far more important than a man. Women talk about coming to Italy, and not just Italy, but Spain, France, Portugal, and saying that their experiences there gave them an awakening. And a lot of times, this awakening has nothing to do with the men that they meet, but everything to do with who they become once they leave the confines of the places that they are. And this is especially important for Black women. While so many women feel trapped and put in a box, no matter where they are, when they are able to leave and find a new way of expressing themselves someplace else, this starts to feel like the best thing that they have. And I can tell you, I feel like I understand why so many Black women come abroad and feel like they have had these awakenings and that these places are responsible for that. But in truth, it's just because they finally found a place where their nervous systems are allowed to exhale and where they finally allow themselves to have a little bit of magic in their lives. A lot of women, particularly Black women, when they come abroad, people are saying that they're left because they couldn't find a man in the United States, or they're chasing white men or European standards. People, when they talk about particularly women, Black women coming abroad, they try to frame them as women who can't get a man, who can't get a Black man, or they're trying to find and chase white men. And finally, they're just trying to escape. They're trying to escape who they are. They're trying to escape. And to a certain extent, that's true. They're trying to escape the ideas that have been forced upon them as women and as Black women. In reality, what happens is they have allowed themselves to be open, and they have, for the first time, it feels like, choices. Black women are accused of coming to Europe out of desperation, when in reality, a lot of them come out of having discernment. And I don't think everyone realizes that when they first leave the United States and they come to another country and they think, I'm going to meet men and blah, blah, blah. They've heard all the stories. But in reality, what they find is themselves. They finally allow themselves to open up their horizons and to do things simply out of curiosity, simply out of trying something different and not feeling judged about it. When people try to compare women, particularly Black women, to passport bros, there's a huge difference. It's actually pretty lazy to frame Black women in the same ideas that you do passport bros, because when men are traveling to date, they are traveling to extract things from women. They frame their mobility as entitlement. I made a video about passport bros and the responsibilities they should have. If you want to understand how entitled these men are, go look in that comment section. But when Black women, and women actually in general, when they travel and date abroad, it has a whole different framework. So let's get into my notes on going beyond the passport bro narrative and how Black women have been using travel to redefine love on their own terms. Black women are not leaving the United States because they can't find a man, because they can't get a man. That entire idea is tied to a culture where a woman's value is based on male selection, staying loyal to that man, and the belief that her leaving is a failure on her part. But what's really happening, and not just for Black women, I think for all women, particularly in America, and most women have not had these opportunities to travel for work, to relocate just for quality of life, study somewhere else. And I think particularly for Black women, healing from burnout, reclaiming Black girl joy, reclaiming pleasure, as well as redefining their identity beyond just surviving. What happens is, as a part of that expansion, is that they start dating, and they start dating different people, and they started exploring what that looks like in different places. Really, they credit these ideas and this expansion and this new personality to the places that they end up, be it Italy or Portugal or Spain or places in Africa. But in reality, it's just a release, one that they don't necessarily get when they're in America. A lot of Black women describe something similar when they leave the United States, and it is not being seen as just a Black woman. As Black women, there's a particular role in America that people expect of you. I think the first thing that most Black women start to shed when they move abroad is the strong Black woman trope. You don't have to be strong anymore. You don't have to play that role anymore. You don't have to carry the burdens of a culture, of a society, just because you show up as a Black woman. This is something that many Black women experience no matter what, not just from men, but from white women as well. They're expected to be strong and carry the burdens of everybody around them. They let that go when they move abroad. Of course, racism does not disappear. We still have to deal with the constructs that every society has. Global racism is real, but when you're allowed to breathe in certain other ways, those things start to seem a little smaller just because your existence is not dependent on every trope associated with you when you show up in a space. Really, sometimes being able to let go one burden is enough to make you feel like you have enough space to breathe. When it comes to dating, that breathing starts to feel like more choices, more options. I hear a lot of women say they finally feel like they are appreciated, that they are liked. Black women in the United States are often told that their options are limited, that they can't make the same choices. And men try to hold them to that. The message is almost always the same. I think Tyler Perry, not that long ago, said that most women should be happy if they have a man who can just, contribute to the light bill, and they're doing everything else. All of a sudden, options open up and they can choose differently. They can start asking questions about who they like. Is it something that fulfills them? What feels healthy to them? What intimacy actually looks like beyond survival and struggle and the ideologies and ideas that people have attached to them just because they're Black women in a space. What they ultimately allow themselves to feel is how their nervous system has changed when they're someplace else, and when these ideas and tropes are not the first thing they need to filter themselves through in relationships and dating. And that is when they start to feel that awakening, because when your nervous system is allowed to relax and breathe, and you're not always working from an edge or flight or fear situation, you feel different. And that a lot of times is why people associate these awakening experiences with the places that they are. And in reality, the only thing that has changed is them and their openness to the possibility of magic. When I came here, I did not come to Italy looking for a man. I have never felt like I didn't have choices. So I didn't have the same ideologies that a lot of women have when they come here. And sometimes when I hear women talk about, oh, I'm coming to Italy because I think I'm going to meet my man. And I think, I think a lot of times I find frustration with that. But realizing that so many women have attached these freedom experiences, these choices to the place that they actually experience it in is understandable. I am not somebody who felt that I didn't have choices in dating or being around men or whatever. I dated plenty of non-Americans when I was in the United States. I didn't have to come to another country to do that. My friends used to call my dating roster like United Colors of Benetton. I don't always like when women say that, but I understand why they come, and that potentially it's an evolution. Some women end up actually with men that they would never ever date in the United States because somehow that feeling is different still. So it's not even about the men and what they're getting. Some of the quality of men that they get aren't that much different. However, they feel that they have been able to let something go and to breathe. And what that breath leads into, the fact that some of them feel like they're in much healthier places as themselves to make the choices and the sacrifices in the relationships that they have. They feel like they are having healthy multicultural relationships. They have supportive people around them that even if there's difficulties, they feel like those difficulties do not outweigh the positive aspects of what they're experiencing in their lives. But instead, a lot of times the conversation is never about this evolution for these women. It's more about them not being able to get a man in the United States, not being able to get a Black man, not being satisfied as Black women, or they're chasing validation from European standards. But I do feel like a lot of women, regardless of what they find in relationships in these countries, what they start to discover, even through the pathways of these relationships, they don't feel like they are competing for basic acknowledgement of who they are as a human being and not who someone thinks they should be as this woman in this role. They stop asking the questions about whether or not he really chooses them, whether or not they're enough. They finally feel that because they've been having these experiences and choices and awakenings and feeling their nervous system release and relax, it allows them to be more open for different types of relationship experiences and feeling like they are able to just be a woman. They focus on finally feeling soft. If they feel soft and they feel safe and they're allowed to feel like this is not a place where they're always in a fight or flight, they end up in a place that's happy for them. This shifts some ideologies in them, even if they end up with men that they wouldn't look twice at in their home country. They have found a balance for themselves. And I think that a lot of times people assume that they are doing it just for the validation. But the truth is, they start to validate themselves. And relationships come and go. Sometimes people end up in relationships that are a part of their growth story. They might not be there forever, but it's a part of them developing the autonomy for themselves in dating, in relationships. And that's something that sometimes I forget when people come here and they tell me, oh, I came here to meet a man, blah, blah, blah. It's a journey, right? And it's one that I don't necessarily always want to be. I wouldn't want to be on. I don't want to travel to meet men. I don't want to do any of those things. But I understand that some women come to these countries, and what really happens for them and what they really start to discover is self-love if they allow themselves to. And what they really start to be able to ask themselves is, am I looking to be chosen? Am I looking to be picked? What ends up happening when a lot of women go abroad, particularly Black women, they find themselves. They're able to express themselves in ways that they don't feel they are allowed to in the United States because of the limitations that the culture has put on them based on race and gender. What Black women are often expected to do in the United States is audition. And this audition is associated with the roles that are expected of Black women: to fix something, to be the emotional mule, to do all of these things. And mind you, this is something that is particular for almost all women. However, it is something that is almost expected from everyone in society of Black women in the United States. And then when they come abroad, they feel alleviated of those burdens. And they allow themselves to be curious. They allow themselves to try things that they wouldn't try in the United States. They allow themselves to not feel scared. What they allow themselves to do is to choose partners based on different criteria than they would in the United States. The ability to change that criteria is a part of growth, and is a part of something they feel like they're finally allowed to do. People always assume that when Black women travel to Europe and other places that they are in search of a white European man. There are plenty of women who've come abroad and met Black men, other men of other ethnicities, and still found happiness. It's not always about white folks. this growth that some women are able to find by moving abroad, by dating abroad, by finding love abroad is something essential to breaking down the patriarchal ideologies in their head. And some women, that's what happens to them. They might date and end up with no one at all, but they have found themselves. And that is more important than finding romantic love or a romantic partner, regardless of where you are in the United States. The ability to put down your luggage somewhere and the baggage that social pressures put on you is something that is far grander than finding a man in a country that you happen to go and live in for a little while. That is one of the biggest differences between women who travel and happen to find love abroad versus passport bros who travel particularly so they can find more women to exploit. The discourse with passport bros is about finding women who are more submissive, women who will serve them better, women who ultimately will do what they think they want them to do based on financial and transactional means that will make those women easier to control. Women who are traveling do not have these ideas at all. A lot of times when they try and frame women who travel looking for men with money or men who are going to pay for them, I'm gonna tell you right now, there are very few European men who follow these ideologies. The social structures in Europe do not lead men to be providers in general. The whole provider attitude that some people like try to exploit on social media, as particularly of European men, is so rare. It is not a common practice. The society does not really even support that ideology. Social systems and everything requires everyone to contribute. These ideas are very inbred in most European cultures. When Black women or women in general are moving and dating in the world, it's so much more about discernment. It's so much more about discovery and curiosity and having cultural experiences so that they are actually trying to expand themselves. It is really about connection, and it's connection with the people that they meet, the families that they have, and the cultures that they're in. It is very lazy to have this discourse that Black women or women who travel and date are just female versions of passport bros. Passport bros are traveling to extract compliance, where I think a lot of women, and particularly Black women, are traveling to expand their consciousness. I think that that's the evolution of Black love for a lot of Black women. It is not necessarily Black love in the sense of I need to find a Black man who loves me in a Black way and do Black people things. It is about self-love. And that is what's being redefined for a lot of women is Black love. I'm a Black person. I need to love me. And that self-love is reflected in the experiences that they end up having no matter where they are. But somehow coming abroad has allowed these women to be expansive, to believe in magic. When I came to Italy, like I said, I wasn't coming here to meet someone, but my best friend reminds me often that when I was 12 or 13 years old, I said that I was going to come in Italy and fall in love or something. I don't even know why I chose Italy at that time period in my life. But when I came here, I was fulfilling a promise to myself that I would come to Italy for this particular for a certain birthday and all this. I was fulfilling a promise to myself. So I think I was open to magic when I came here. And I think that that openness, that belief in magic is what makes you open to opportunities, makes you accept offers that you might not have accepted before, that makes you think, maybe this is the result of the spell that I was casting for myself. You just never know. So you're open to trying something different. And I think for a lot of Black women, that magic is something that starts to translate into relationships that are not based on obligation, marriages that are not based on survival and just having to do something to have somebody in your life. I think that they start moving towards something else. They start moving towards intention, partnerships based in intentions, and how those intentions play out for their families, for their emotional stability, and what that means. That ability to breathe and let go is something that so many women just want to experience. And even though there's other social and cultural challenges that exist, putting down really heavy baggage that you have been carrying for your entire life starts to make almost everything feel so much lighter. That's the future of love for Black women. Choosing themselves over the intention of men, choosing themselves over romantic love. If you go somewhere else where you can become who you believe you are, that in and of itself makes you feel so much freer than you were anyplace else. And for Black women, emotional and mental freedom is something that so many do not necessarily experience in America, in the United States. Black women are starting to watch other Black women who want to live without limitations. I know a lot of men will probably disagree, but I think one of the boss moves that I have seen are the women who go to countries in Asia. Most women are not going to Asia to meet men. They are literally going there to change their quality of life, to be able to be free and let down some of the burdens associated with being a woman, being a Black woman in a country that has put all of this baggage on you just for existing the moment that you're born. For Black women who are watching this, is one of the things to understand that do everything you want. Do not allow the limitations that people put on you to exist. Do not allow the belief systems of others to become your belief systems. Sometimes you do have to move away in order to see who you are in your own vision. And I think that's fine. I think the narratives that some people try to create, particularly men, referring to Black women who move abroad, who go to Europe, who do these things, who date outside of their race or culture, as being people who need validation, is a way to control your moves, your attitudes, and your emotions. That we as Black women need to understand is how limiting other people's beliefs are on us. I see it all the times in my comments, people making comments about my nails or making comments about how I look or my dress or what they're trying to put those social expectations that are their own onto you. And that is not who you are, and that's not who you have to be. So guys, if you have not already, it's time. You should be subscribed to my channel. And I look forward to having this discussion with you in the comments. So ciao ciao for now.